Hi there, I'm Coda Babcock. I am the chairperson for all the T, and today I'm going to be explaining basically an HIV 101. So we call it Spilling the Tea on HIV. What's the truth of HIV? So what's going on inside the body? We're going to watch this quick video from Gilead Sciences and Stop the Virus.
If you have HIV, there's a good chance you want to know what's going on inside your body. You may have searched online. You may have asked someone, HIV, there's a good chance you want to... If you have HIV, there's a good chance you want to know what's going on inside your body. You may have searched online. You may have asked someone. You may have even watched a video or two. Now, if you're confused, stay right here, because I'm breaking it down for you. First, know this. HIV is a virus. The letters stand for human immunodeficiency virus. Now I know what you're thinking. Immuno what? But this is a good place to start, because we need to talk about your immune system. Your immune system protects you from disease and helps keep you healthy. It does this with the help of some really important cells called CD4 cells. You may have heard them called T cells. Inside your body are lots of CD4 cells. They are the fighter cells, the defenders against germs. They help keep you from getting sick. But get this, when HIV enters the body, it goes right after these defender cells. It finds a CD4 cell, invades it, and just takes over. If that doesn't sound good, well, it isn't. The CD4 cell is not helping you anymore. It's working for HIV. The infected cell becomes like a factory, making new HIV particles, and these virus particles go on to invade other CD4 cells. That's what HIV does. It multiplies itself inside your body. Now, while this is happening, you may look completely fine. You may feel fine, but the virus is still inside, working away, causing harm to the body. That's the trick HIV plays. Before you even know it, the number of CD4 cells in your body is going down, and the number of virus particles is going up. That's why HIV is an immunodeficiency virus. Your immune system has less fighting power to keep you from getting sick. This can lead to serious infections, to cancer, and of course, to AIDS. The thing is, this doesn't have to happen. You can take care of your health. Now, there is no cure for HIV, but there are many treatments available now to help stop the virus. Remember how I told you HIV works to multiply itself inside the body? Well, HIV treatment stops this from happening. The virus factories get shut down. CD4 cells go back to protecting. The number of CD4 cells could even go up. That's why it's important to talk to your healthcare provider and start treatment before you feel sick. Waiting just gives HIV more time to harm your body. So don't let HIV build a virus-making factory out of your cells. No way. Take care of yourself and stop the virus.
Alright, so is HIV treatable? Yes, HIV is easily treated by medications to the point where a person can become undetectable. Undetectable is another thing that we will talk about later in the video. Is HIV curable, though? HIV has been cured in rare cases globally. I think there's about 2 worldwide, but the methods are often either expensive or raise concerns over ethics, so because it is easily treated through medications, these routes are not usually preferred. What does AIDS stand for? So AIDS stands for Acquired Immune Deficiency Syndrome. And how are HIV and AIDS different from each other? So the difference between HIV and AIDS is that HIV is the virus and AIDS is the condition caused by the virus. Over time, HIV can destroy so many of the body's T cells that the body can't fight off infections and diseases. These special cells help to protect the immune system and help it fight off infections. Untreated, HIV reduces the number of CD4 cells or T cells in the body, and this damage to the immune system makes it harder and harder for the body to fight off infections and some diseases. Opportunistic infections or cancers take advantage of a very weak immune system and can signal that the person has AIDS. So without treatment, HIV advances in stages, overwhelming your immune system. The first is acute HIV infection, which is just the first couple weeks to months of having HIV. And the second is clinical latency. Clinical latency is a little bit later on, about at a couple month mark, and it's when your body's immune system starts to weaken. So these are the 5 fluids that transmit HIV. So we have blood, semen, rectal fluids, vaginal fluids, and breast milk. So HIV can be transmitted from sexual contact, sharing needles to inject drugs, or in vertical transmission or mother-to-baby transmission, so during breastfeeding, pregnancy, or birth. HIV is not transmitted through the air or water, saliva, sweat, tears, or kissing, insects or pets, and sharing toilets, food, or drinks. How can you prevent acquiring HIV? Prevention of HIV includes safer sex like condoms and dental dams, abstinence, using unused or new needles, knowing your status. This is not normally seen as a preventative tool, but knowing your status is very important to prevention of transmission because if you know your status, you know what steps you have to take. PEP, or post-exposure prophylaxis. PrEP, which is pre-exposure prophylaxis, or being undetectable. Undetectable means you're untransmittable, so if you have HIV, you can become undetectable and you have no risk of your partner obtaining HIV. Your sexual health rights. This is for youth and minors specifically. HIV and STI testing for youth and minors. In Colorado, you do not need to have permission from your parent or guardian to get tests for HIV and STIs. When you make an appointment, make sure to ask, if I make an appointment and receive any kind of services like HIV or STI testing, will you tell my parents? This is especially important if you're going to a doctor where you've already given permission to discuss things like this with your parents. HIV and STI treatment for youth and minors. If you test positive for HIV or any other STI, you can receive treatment at any age. Yet the healthcare provider may discuss this with your parents if you're under 12 years old. Access to prevention options, so there's safer sex supplies. A person of any age can buy condoms and lubricant from a drugstore, pharmacy, grocery store, or online. Testing, you can get STI tests at any age, and many community organizations do provide them for free. PrEP and PEP. All minors are allowed to get prescriptions for PrEP and PEP in Colorado. Oh, let's ignore that. Delete that part. Let's talk about undetectable a little bit more. Being undetectable means that the traces of the virus are so low that modern medical tests cannot find HIV. It does not mean a person is cured of HIV, however, it means that they are not detectable. The science is clear that people living with HIV can feel confident that if they have an undetectable viral load and take their medications properly, they will not pass on HIV to their sexual partners. What comes to your mind when you hear the words HIV stigma? So for most people, this means discrimination, social isolation, possibly criminalization. So let's go into that a little bit more.
After my diagnosis, I knew very well about the stigma associated with HIV. I definitely wanted support from everyone that I cared about. I know my friends and family and everyone around me. And I thought that if I disclosed this information to them, they would either reject me or make fun of me or judge me.
Most of the stigma that I experienced was self-inflicted. I think a lot of times people, when they're diagnosed HIV positive, they don't realize that they tell themselves to be ashamed, to be afraid, to feel disappointed in themselves because they were diagnosed HIV positive.
It's mind-boggling. It's terrifying. It's scary. You don't know where to go, who to turn to, all those thoughts that I mentioned that are running through your head, and they're different for every person.
My first thought was, now will anybody love me? After the diagnosis happened, I didn't know much about it, but I just knew that it would be a difficult situation in dating. How do I disclose this to someone?
Automatically, if you disclose your status, somebody thought that you've been on drugs or a prostitute or living a certain type of life.
Because there is a lot of different misinformation and miseducation, we have that stigma that affects people. And so there are still instances that people might not be comfortable hugging or holding hands or going on dates or sipping your cup of water. To be differentiated in that way is a painful experience. They may be completely ignorant to the fact that they're treating me somehow differently. But I try to look back on those instances as teachable moments. If I can impart them with that knowledge, then they might go through their life and explain it to somebody else.
Once I learned that I'm no different than what I was before my diagnosis, I think I began to love on myself even more.
For people living with HIV, stigma can lead to being gossiped about, excluded from family events and social gatherings, kept from associating with friends and family members, verbally or physically threatened or assaulted by their intimate partners or strangers even, are fired from jobs, kicked out of school, disowned by their family members, thrown out of church, denied health services or dental care, denied health insurance, although this isn't much of an issue after the Affordable Care Act is passed, arrested, taken to court, losing their children in custody battles, detained or quarantined, forced to take an HIV test against their will, sterilized, denied their right to have children. So sterilized and denied the right to have children are essentially the same thing, only denying the right to have children includes adoption, having their status disclosed by someone else, having people fear them, being judged, or feeling ashamed. So this is all information from the Colorado Compassion Survey. The 4 I's of HIV stigma include institutional stigma, policies and procedures basically by government institutions that make sure that people with HIV are treated differently. So presidential executive order disallowing international adoptions of children living with HIV is included in one of them. Ideological stigma, which is beliefs or cultures, so stereotypes of people living with HIV. Some religions viewed HIV as a punishment to gay people, so that's one example of that. Interpersonal stigma, interactions between 2 or more people, so making a joke about HIV or people living with HIV. Internalized stigma, which is when a person living with HIV believes in that stigma and its values as facts, so a person living with HIV denying themselves love or intimacy. Words mean things, so this is just about HIV language. So all of this is person-first language, which means that you center the person as the subject rather than their condition or HIV status. So, for example, HIV infected, instead of using that, you can use people or person living with HIV. Victim, innocent, or suffer. Instead, use either survivor or don't use these words at all. Intravenous drug user. Instead, you can put a person who injects drugs. There's also prostitute and prostitution. Instead, you should use the words person who does sex work. Promiscuous, slutty, or tramp, a person who has multiple partners, and oftentimes promiscuous, slutty, or tramp don't have any real meanings. What comes to mind when you hear the words infected, infectious, or infecting? Oftentimes people think of germs, generally of really gross things. And oftentimes this also associates with the word dirty. So, dirty and clean. Many people who are trying to say they're free of HIV or STIs will use the word clean. Why is this stigmatizing? This is stigmatizing because it implies that people with HIV are somehow dirty, which is not true in any way. A medical condition or diagnosis doesn't make you clean or dirty, and it doesn't affect your hygiene in any way. While we are all a work in progress, I call upon you to stand up when you hear or see things that are stigmatizing. For standing by in silence is the same as showing support. Sometimes you'll make mistakes or choose not to stand up, and that's okay. Just take it one day at a time. Onward to PrEP and PEP. What are PrEP and PEP? So PrEP is a medication used to prevent HIV before coming in contact with it. It's similar to the birth control pill in terms of how it is taken and how it prevents a condition before exposure occurs. It's a once-a-day preventative pill, and it's currently only available in pill form, but testing for other methods is in progress. PEP is a regimen started to prevent a person from obtaining HIV after they've come into contact with it, similar to a Plan B type of medication, but it must be taken daily for a short period of time rather than just the once. Given within 72 hours of exposure, but some medical providers do prefer to start this regimen 2 hours after exposure. All the T stands for teaching, empowerment, and advocacy. A youth-led, youth-focused education and advocacy group related to fighting HIV stigma, criminalization, and promoting medications, safer sex, and access to education as HIV prevention. We are a Youth Committee Advisory Board, or CAB, for the iPrEP study through CHIP. The iPrEP study is for a study currently in place for injectable version of PrEP. All the TBs bi-weekly on Saturdays via the Zoom platform currently. But normally we meet once a month on the third Saturday, and then we alternate between in-person contact and Zoom calls. For more information, you can contact me, I'm Coda Babcock, by reaching out to allthet303@gmail.com.